Welcome to the second episode of the Sean Trey Show. I feel very vain and super narcissistic using my name in such a fashion, but it's the internet. Why not? So I have a really special guest today, and one of my friends from college and a all-around awesome individual, Jason Araujo. Welcome to the show. Now, Jason, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, all that good shit?
Sure. I guess this question goes in a lot of, I think it depends on where you're from, how you answer this question, like, what do I do for work? Or what do I believe in? Or like, what do I do in my free time?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead. Maybe is this podcast, I'm aiming toward the ideas of creativity and
Okay.
inspirational, people looking to create stuff, whatever profession they're in, how they find themselves as creative individuals. What do you do for work? We'll start with that.
Sure. What I do for work is that I have been working in interactive agencies for a while. So doing software engineering, programming, but with a focus on physical installations in the world. If you think about, for example, museums, when you go into a museum, there's a lot of, computer vision, body detection, facial recognition, touch screens, touch surfaces, anything that computers will do to gather input from humans and then control systems. So that's what I have been doing most recently in the last decade.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like how would I'm trying to think back. Like the last time I went to the museum with my daughter, and there were some really interesting exhibits that were extremely interactive. Very personalized. You'd walk up and you're touching control surfaces, or working stuff. Is that type of stuff you're talking about? Or are you talking about much more advanced concepts?
Both. I have done a lot of stuff that ranges the spectrum from pretty straightforward. You walk into a room, the lights turn on, or there's a menu and you're just touching a touch screen, to much, much more advanced things like actually displaying the ratio of your bodies, talking about the golden ratio and like math. So using a skeleton tracker to look at your body and display like, here's the ratio between your upper body and your lower body. And it, modifies as you're moving and things like that. So
that's actually really interesting. And go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that I've done quite a range, from very basic to very, very complicated. So
one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, because, and one, I want to shift back because we knew each other in college, and one of the things that I'm thinking about different people, like the podcast I did yesterday. I had this really cool. It was really interesting. I didn't know where it was going to go with my friend Jill, but like the energy of the universe just brought it together at the end of the podcast. It was like her advice to young actors was say yes, and I was like, it's really interesting, and but knowing you, I want to talk about one thing in your story, and it's like, you ever see that infographic like success and what people think it is, and there's this drawing of a straight line, but then what it really looks like is this line that goes, because I know you. Tell me, I would like for you to talk about like what was your college major, what you went into, and then how you found where you ended up. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah. I can go on about that for a while. So I'll just start talking and you stop me.
Yeah, all right, go. Where did you start? What did you study in college?
Sure. In college, I studied music. I have a Bachelor of Arts in music, and I didn't really. The college that I went to, that you went to also, Pacific Union College, did not have a music focus that I really wanted. They only had two options. One was pedagogy, teaching, which I wasn't really interested in, or performance. which I also wasn't really interested in. So I didn't choose a specialization, and I studied and performed classical guitar, did a recital, and that was great. I really enjoyed it at the time. I will say, I think that looking back at the history of my life, I chose that major because I didn't know what else to do. I also think that at the time I was in college because that was just the next thing that you do.
100%.
I don't know what to do.
That's why I had like 5 majors and ended up on history, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do with this after I graduate?
Yeah. Right.
But go ahead.
So for a very brief period, I actually did a little bit of substitute teaching in some schools. I did some private lessons. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Didn't know how to make that into a job. So I went back to school for recording engineering. So I got a degree in recording engineering, got a specialization there. Went to a school in the East Bay, which is kind of one of those kind of like Full Sail for-profit, really try to crank you into the industry pretty fast with a lot of high-end tools. Got a lot. I remember
you did a full bachelor's, I believe it was like in 2 years or something like that.
Yeah, I think 2.5 years. Yeah, it was pretty compressed, very intense.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember there was one time you called me and you were like telling me that you had to do this. Like essentially they wiped, they gave you a movie clip, and then you had to create the entire like match using Foley and other sound effects to actually just create an entire like feel and vibe on this clip. And I believe it was like 7 minutes, which now that I'm in video production, I'm like, oh my God, that's an insanely long amount of time to create like sounds from nothing, and like you told me that you had to use things that were like around your room and stuff. You weren't allowed to use any, sampled, or no, you could use samples, but it had to be stuff that you were sampling yourself.
Correct. Yeah, I had to go and create all the source audio, no sample libraries. Great exercise, very intensive. Like that, it really gets you. Like as you said, it just. You have no idea how much work that is until you go to do it. You're like, oh man, got to record everything. You got to clean everything up. You got to like slice it perfectly. You got to remove the noise. Yep. It's pretty intense. Yeah.
It's super intense. But you finished up school. Where were you standing? What was going on at that point?
So right around that time, I finished school I did that in like 2007. And I got a job at a small jazz recording studio in the East Bay, which is unfortunately no longer there. But it was called East Bay Records. Or I'm sorry, it was just called Bay Records by a really charming old dude named Michael Kogan. He was a fantastic guy. He was a former engineer who worked at Ampex. And he just loved jazz, opened up a recording studio. And they did a lot of, pretty small groups, a lot of local stuff. He did some great national people too, but it was one of those places that was, it's not a lot of money in jazz studio recordings. So I, to this day, it was one of the best jobs I ever had, but I had to work a shitty side job in order to afford that job, because it paid fine, but there just wasn't that much work. I loved it though. But right around 2008, the financial collapse happened in the U.S. The housing market boom and all bust and all that. So things got even worse. I had to take some other jobs I really just didn't like. And I was dating a woman at the time who was moving back to Chicago in 2009. And I was like, you know what? For quite a lot of reasons, I just didn't feel like I was going anywhere in the Bay Area. I didn't feel like I was making progress, felt kind of stuck both by, my social constraints, by my financial constraints and professional constraints. And I just was like, you know what? Let's try a whole new city. Chicago. I don't know anything about Chicago. I'll go. Got here, loved it. Amazing. Yeah. Could not get a job in the recording industry, which I was trying to do. Just couldn't. I was trying to, everything I could think of, like video games industries is originally what I got into recording for. I wanted to do sound design for video games. I did a little bit of post-production work for some indie films and things like that. But once I got to Chicago, like I just couldn't get in anywhere. So much this, now that I've been here for a while, I know that Chicago is, there's a lot of nepotism here. So you get your friends hooked up and that's how it works. That's the game.
Yeah.
As a new kid in town.
You know, and I'm in film, and the one constant in film industry is access, and people who have it try to keep it, and people who don't have it try to get it. And, you know, and then, or they try to keep it with people, you know, the people that have it try to keep it with people that they know too, to kind of protect their own interests, you know? And so I totally understand that perspective. But you're sitting there, and then you're in this space of like, you know, where are you standing at that point? You get into Chicago. What was your catalyst for change to move in this new direction?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the catalyst was financial. I needed to get a job, but I had quite an existential struggle in that. I was like, you know, there's that, what is it, like the sunk cost idea. Like, I've put so much of my life into doing music and to recording. If I don't now get a job in that, like, what have I been doing for years? So I had a really big struggle with this because, you know, I needed a job, but I didn't want to try to switch industries after all this time. So what I ended up doing was I found a job off of Craigslist for, they would be very upset at this characterization, but basically I got a job at a cult. I'm only half joking when I say that. But they were like a personal power, self-improvement. Yeah, self-improvement, personal power kind of thing. If you're familiar with Tony Robbins, they're kind of like that. Basically, they needed an AV person, and I was like, well, this isn't what I want to do, but it's at least related. I work with audio gear, video, audio production. I'm capturing media. I'm creating pipelines for production. So I did that for years. Didn't pay well, but it at least got me into what I was doing.
And you know, and there's some cool things along the way. I mean, you've always had like some cool side hobbies too. Like I remember once you told me about how you're interactive, and this is where, you know, I really want to find out more about the interactive programming too, because you used to tell me about some of the interactive things you would make for Burning Man and places like that. You had told me that you programmed like a Dance Revolution with, you know, like when you made mistakes, it actually like blasted you with flames, and I was like, that's amazing. You know?
Yes, I can tell you all about that. So when I was in the Bay Area and going to this recording school, there were two things that kind of happened that have come full circle now to put me in the industry that I'm in. The two things were, one, I took a class on game programming, which got me into this software called Max MSP, which is a visual node-based programming language. And it was built entirely for music manipulation, like audio manipulation, and gathering sensor data from the real world. So, you know, I believe it was created in like the early 90s, but really started to mature in the mid 2000s. And people in the Bay Area were using this for dance, for interactive stuff, for installations, kinetic sculptures. So that was one thing that really started to influence me. And that dovetailed with another thing, which is that I got into the Burning Man culture in the Bay Area. And that what you were just talking about was something that I didn't actually program, but I went with their camp and kind of helped maintain it at Burning Man for a year. And that was a project called Dance Immolation. And it was a Dance Revolution project, which it's based on Stepmania, which is an open source version. And you would get dressed in a giant proximity suit with flamethrowers pointed at you, and when you played well, they would shoot flames upwards, and if you played poorly, you would literally get shot in the face with flamethrowers.
That's awesome.
I didn't program that, for the record. But
I love that, because here's one of the things. I'm going to go on a tangent right now, because you introduced me to one of my favorite authors and someone who I still just worship on his short, Jorge Luis Borges. Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. And a lot of people don't know about him. Cool people know about him, but like it's ridiculously crazy. But the Lottery of Babylon. this beautiful short story about how there's this lottery, but people lose the thrill if you can't. You win something, that's great, but what if people just get used to that? Well, what if you can lose something? You know what I mean? And so there's the idea that you could win to become a leader of a country, but you could also lose and get executed or have other things. And so I look at that, and I look at how I'm a huge believer in simulation theory, and I think we're living in some giant video game right now. But yeah, that's where I'm at. But I tend to think that the way that video games are progressing, because you said you like games, and the Dance Simulation was this thing, that there's this risk inherent to it, and we don't see that yet for video games that, except for the people that are diving into their TV when they're wearing an Oculus Rift or something, there's not the danger to the game yet. And I'm wondering, if that someday will happen. Do you have any perspectives on that?
I think you bring up an interesting point. I think that modern existence has done what we've sort of achieved what we've been trying to achieve all along as a society, which is to make things very safe. Not to say that there's no danger or risk, but if you want, as compared to 1,000 years ago, most places that you could choose to live now, you're not really at risk of getting eaten by a tiger. You can sleep through the night largely without fear of being mauled by a bear or an alligator or something. So our primitive brains have not evolved at the same pace as our technology. So we're now in a place where we're safe. Most things are fine. Sure, it's, I'm kind of waving my hands at what we know is like, there's crime. Of course, there's still danger, but by and large, like, we've gone so far.
Let's look at it this way. That's what I was telling my wife. There was a study that came out. I'll have to research the study and put a link in the description at some point in time after I edit this. But there was a study that I remember reading that people sleep better when they sleep in the same position, in the same direction. If you change someone's sleep, even their direction, they can't sleep well. And my wife was like, well, why the hell is that? I was like, because you're afraid of being eaten. Like, your brain is like, where's the damn tiger coming from that's going to eat me? And for the most part, most of the places we go are safe. And so please continue. That was very interesting. I want to hear more of what you're going to say.
Sure. Yeah. Just to that, essentially we have made things so safe that, I think there's a part of our brain that expects danger and is always on the lookout for it. And if we don't get, a safe way to engage with that and get an actual challenge and thrill, then things get boring. And so to add an element of real or perceived danger into an activity is a way to kind of tickle part of that brain. And if you can do that in a way that, you're actually not harming people, but you can provide that experience for them, I think people generally love it. That's why we love roller coasters, we love putting ourselves in the feeling of perceived danger while actually being safe.
Yeah. Circling back into your interactive, are you still making some of these interactive exhibits that are more artistic, that are your own creations, or are you mainly just doing interactive stuff for work? I
quit my job back in April with the intent, to just do woodworking.
Wow.
I sort of wanted to get
that's
away.
Awesome.
Yeah. I could talk a lot about why I made that decision. This is due to the industry. The industry is very focused on doing things very fast. And so as far as learning and understanding, the process that I worked under was do things as fast as possible. It's better to do them fast than it is to do them properly. Get it done and do it again and again, and doing all these different things. I kind of got tired of that and was like, what I would like to do is to do the opposite. I want to stop and I want to go very slowly, and I want to do the thing correctly. And if it's done wrong, I'm going to do it again until it's correct. And so that's where I've gone with my woodworking. I have started to mesh the two. Unfortunately, I don't have a photo or anything like that unless I can share my screen, but
you can email me and I can send me an email and we'll pop it on the screen when I edit the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. The latest thing that I just did was I have some Wi-Fi controlled lights in my house. These lights that are behind me are like they're day to night. They're RGBW. So right now they're on daylight settings, so they're really bright white. But I could turn them down to very low yellow, red, pink, whatever, all the colors of the rainbow. I did some woodworking with some really nice Brazilian cherry wood, and took 3 hard drive platters. And so I don't know if you're familiar offhand what they look like, but they're extremely shiny, very reflective. And I made 3 touch buttons out of them, so I can control the lights in my room with these touch buttons. So I'm doing the woodworking, and I'm bringing that into the interactive skills that I have, and just kind of making like everyday objects that I can use in my house.
That's awesome. Well, I want to share too, because I think that there is an aspect that we're missing a little bit here. And I had made a note, and I just hadn't had the vibe that I might bring this up. The idea, you and I we studied martial arts together. And we studied jiu-jitsu, Japanese style jiu-jitsu for a long time together. And one of the things that I love, one of the books that I really loved was Zen and the Art of Archery. And the idea of this guy who's doing this skill over and over and over. And the idea of this art is mushin, the idea of no mind, or the beginner's mind, that you've done this skill 1,000 times, and then all of a sudden, and we would practice a judo throw for, 2 hours, doing the same throw again and again and again, and nice and slowly, And it was interesting because you progress, you work as hard as you can, but then all of a sudden you get to this place where there is this emptiness of mind and things are just kind of fluid. And I've always had this love for woodworking as well. I bought a after the movie, The Last Samurai, I had to get one of those, the Bokens, but it was made by this guy in the US, Kingfisher Woodwork. And what was really interesting about all of his stuff is everything, he doesn't use any sandpaper, and he doesn't use there's no sandpaper, he doesn't use any electric tools. Everything is done with planes and hand tools. And, and so you look at the Boken, and it has all of these little tiny micro cuts. Like, he's just done all of these micro cuts with a plane. And it's just so cool because a level of and it's balanced, it's symmetrical, it's like perfectly symmetrical. This guy did not he's really putting soul into that. And if you look at some of I'm absolutely fascinated by these videos right now on Facebook, and you're gonna think I'm nuts, but horseshoeing videos, I am absolutely into the one of the pages that I watch is called the Idaho Horseshoeing School, and it's the beautiful art of this, and it's it takes them, I think it's 30 minutes, 40 minutes to an hour to shoe 1 foot, because they scrape away the old material, they kind of shape the hoof of the horse, and then they have to sit there and they go and they hammer out the steel into the shape that will, help the horse as best they can. Sometimes they have to think about different, conditions. Is the horse injured? Is it lame? And it's not rushed. You can't rush that process. It is something that you do, and you do right, because if you do it wrong, there's no do-overs. It's you cut away too much hoof. Well, it's done now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just really interesting to watch that, and I feel like in some levels, as a society, maybe COVID-19 has hastened to this as well. People are looking at a trying to figure out the way to say it. It's not soulful. Soulful isn't the right word. More conscious existence. Would you
more engaged? I would say
engaged. Yeah. That's a great way to say it, because you know, you can do things fast, but where's your mind? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll try to put in a very few sentences a very large rant that I have about modern society. Yeah, I'm definitely entering the get off my lawn years in my life. but yeah, one thing that it really just kind of drives me crazy is that there as we've progressed as a society and automation is just taking off. You know, we were promised a future in which automation would save us all the work. And we don't have to really do much anymore, right? Like the Jetsons, like everything would be provided for, you know, machinery would be doing everything, and it is. However, the benefits of that automation is not going to the benefit of most people. So agree. we as a majority population are not gaining the benefits of that automation. And in fact, we're having to work more because now the difficult things that might take a long time, which would cause you to live slow because you had to wait for things. Now the wait is removed, but you still have to earn money, and all of the easy jobs are done by, or all of the things that can be automated are automated. And so you have to find these weird niche things and do them quickly because everybody expects things to be automated, and you now have to compete with robots. So you also have to go fast. And it's just like, no, we as a society can take care of all basic needs now. Whatever, this is going to get socialist real fast, but like there's no reason that we have the resources to make life acceptable for everyone. We have those resources.
There was an interesting point that I've heard recently around AI, and one of the things that, like, you have to look at, you know, as things have become automated and controlled like that, who's controlling the controller? You know, as we are having our society automated, as we are having things kind of just made easier, you know, made more comfortable. Well, according to who? You know what I mean? It's like, you know, it's the Wizard of Oz. Who's behind the wizard? You know what I mean? And we have very countering forces that all, you know, whether it be countries or governments or corporations, that all want our interest and our attention and our time. You know, it's like there was one statistic that I was just like floored by, right? And this my wife is a musician, and we are always now with YouTube, you are driven to continue to create and produce and to get out those covers because they are what people want to see. It's just the creativity is like, you know, and one of the numbers that makes you insane is that Gangnam Style. And I'm not hating on Gangnam Style. It's a fun song, right? It's a fun song for what it is. It you know, it's poppy. My kid loves it.
Oh yeah.
If one person sat down to watch Gangnam Style, and you watched it for the cumulative time that everyone on the planet has watched Gangnam Style, I believe that it was something around 10,000 years of collective time spent on Gangnam Style. And I mean, it's just like, it's insane to think about that we put, where do we put our attention is such an interesting concept. And like you're saying, like, society has reached this point where we have time, but what do we do with it? You know?
Yeah. That I just, yeah, what do we do with it? I feel like there's this sort of artificial scarcity put on our time. You know, it's like scurry around, make sure that you're producing, make sure that you're consuming, make sure that you're earning. And like I said, we've been given this automated future where needs can be taken care of, but somehow we're even busier than we ever were. And I'm like, it's purely a resource allocation.
Can I add one more thing? Busier and more distracted.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it's not just about the busyness. It's about there's no attention. It's like, and I've noticed it in my own household as we've dealt with the COVID lockdowns. We started out and we were getting out and doing things, and that phone was occasionally in the hand. But like, I'm trying to like get my dopamine every day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's just this constant thing of seeking stimulation, but it's the word I'm looking for is escaping me, but it's something that you can't touch. The second you reach for it, it's like a phantom that just disappears in front of you. Which I want to circle in, and I want to circle back to a question. What does success look like for you?
That I think is a really difficult question, and I'm still trying to answer it. By many measures, I think that I am already successful. Like, I have a stable house, have a great partner, I have a wide set of skills that I can employ for a lot of things. Do I feel content? I don't know. I would not. What is success? That is something that I struggle with.
Can I reframe it then? Let me reframe it.
Sure, please.
If you have that moment where you're looking back on your life, what is the thing that you really want to remember?
Mm-hmm. I think that for me, looking back at my life, I want to remember the interactions that I had with people and know that I was a net positive for people.
A net positive. I really like that concept.
Yeah, because you can't be positive for everybody all the time. It's just so as long as the scales are balanced, that I did more good than harm. That's what I'm going for.
I like that. No. I like that. I'm trying to think about now with your. I want to come back to some of your interactive stuff. Or where do you see yourself going in the future? What do you think your next steps will be?
That's also something I've been trying to work on recently. I think that I have been up till now trying to really work my passion into my profession, and I think I've done a pretty decent job of that. I think that's the way that society seems to be going and industry seems to be going. I think that's a little bit more of a trap than it used to be, because everything's so commercialized now. Everything's so factory oriented, even in a software development sense. Everything's like, do it fast, do it quick. You just got to get it done. We're going to keep producing content. And so I'm a little bit disillusioned on at least for my particular skill set and the affordances that I get from that. I'm a little bit disillusioned about what opportunities I have to, keep my passion and my profession as tightly linked as they are. So to answer your question, I think what I'm looking for is to move into a little bit more of a stable, boring job where I can, earn a good deal of money, prepare for my future, but then on the side start to turn my skills more towards like sustainability or getting engaged in, local nonprofits or things like that. And so that I can start to use so that I'm not drained by my daily work, because that's what was happening to me in my last profession. When I got off work, I didn't want to do my hobbies because my hobbies were pretty closely aligned with my work. So I was like, when I get off work, I'm like, I just want to stop and do nothing. I don't want to stare at screens. I want to do nothing. I would like a job where I can kind of do my thing, get paid, get out of work, and have enough energy and inspiration left to be like, okay, here I go. I'm going to get into, some solar punk media creation, or getting into local narratives of people, and or teaching my skills to people, or, knowledge transfer, things like that.
Things like that. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think I can't get too precise because I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going with that, like what my next step is. But
it's a journey, though.
Yeah, and that's what
we used to watch all those fun samurai movies back in the day.
Oh yeah,
and it was a Lone Wolf and Cub, Ogamito, and all those. And one of the things that I always used to love was the idea of, like, my favorite is always going to be Seven Samurai. And
so good.
Sometimes you don't find that meaning until life throws it at you. Sometimes it's like the journey is not revealed until you're just in it, and you don't even realize you're in it until it's like, oh wow, this is what I've been supposed to be doing. So yeah, I just have been thinking about that in my own space, in my own career. There's always those moments that you look back and said, I remember, like, my dad was like, when I was in college, you should study digital media technology, which is like filmmaking. There was a new degree, and I was like, I don't want to do that. Then 15, 20 years later, then I'm in film, and I'm, doing my master's in screenwriting, and I've been producing, videos for 15 years. And I'm like, wow, that really would have been helpful. But, studying what I did with history was extremely applicable to me, because I learned storytelling. I learned the idea of how to think outside the box. And so it's like, what was it? Steve Jobs always says that you can't connect the dots looking forward. I love that speech he had. Regardless of how you feel about Steve Jobs, his speech, that graduation speech he had, was pretty interesting, where you can't connect the dots looking forward, you can only connect them looking back. And yeah, it's interesting like that. Well, I want to say thank you for your time. Anything else that you'd like to throw out there today? Any other thoughts that you'd love to share?
I guess one last thing. I sort of had a thought while you were talking just now, where you were saying, like, sometimes the meaning or the purpose isn't revealed until you get there. And I've sort of been on a trip of, like, I'm not sure that there is any there to ever get to. The process for me right now, the process is what is the result. The process is the result, I guess I would say, is like what I am doing now. As you just said, looking back is where you connect the dots, but what are the dots? Like, while you're in the moment, you don't ever arrive at an end point, and you're like, oh, here's where the chapter ends and the next one begins today. Like, I mentally have achieved the thing that I've been trying to achieve forever. It's like, no, you got that new job, or you finished that project, but you wake up and it's another day and you're still doing. And so just the constant process of doing and being is the ongoing continuum that we live in. And so I'm trying to really just, to say an overused phrase, just to be here now all the time.
Yeah. Well, there was another one I heard. The journey is the destination. Yeah, like, exactly. You're in it, and it's about one of my favorite analogies is always for people who we grew up in California, and so, I grew up in Southern California, which is, the surf culture, and I'm a horrible surfer, but I love it. And one of the things that's really interesting with surfing is that you can't really be out there thinking about the next wave, because you've got this, 10-foot wall of water that is barreling down on you, and you have enough time to think now. Either I dive under this water or I try to catch this wave. You don't have time to think about your car keys, or did I leave the stove on, or did I forget about this? it's really a present moment type of awareness. And you know, and I think that that's kind of something that I feel people on a soul level are longing for. It's that ability to stop and smell the roses, and an awareness that you even need to. And it's interesting that we will do that in video games. We will dive into a game and be like, whoa, look at these graphics. Wow, look at that. But in our own everyday lives, it's not as evident. I have a guitar that was made for me. It's a knockoff Fender. It's a knockoff Stratocaster, but it's made by this guy here who's this absolutely amazing luthier. Do you know how to pronounce that? Luthier? What is the correct?
American English, I think it's just luthier.
Luthier, yeah. Okay. All the French people that are watching this are like, oh,
yes, they'll be upset by that.
Yeah, right.
I apologize on behalf of America.
Right? So sorry. There's one language that I just can't pull off. And so he makes these amazing guitars, and it was a natural paint. So it's just, there's no paint on it. And it's an ash body, and it's just, I just looked up and over at it, and you forget how stunning it is. And how stunning it is that, you know, the time that went into that, and the awareness that there was this whole circle of and here's the thing, right? Coming back to what you said, there's not a dot. At what point did that transition from a tree into the guitar? And at what point did the guitar transition into music? You know, and at what point was water transitioned into the wood? It's like, there's not like these always these so clear chapters. Like, obviously there was a moment where the tree was cut down and stuff, but you know, the wood is still the wood, you know what I mean? And it still was just shaped into something else. And so it's like, cue the Disney soundtrack, the circle of life. And I mean, you know, oh,
just
good
keeps
times.
going.
It just keeps going. Just keeps going.
Yeah.
Well, I have appreciated your time tonight, and I want to say thank you so much, man. I would love to have you back on more and to discuss some more things sometime. But
absolutely, anytime, man.
Yeah, man. All right, talk to you later.
Yeah, it's really good
I'll end this. I won't end the call,
and,
but I'll say goodbye to our audience, and yeah, for more any information about this wonderful, awesome gentleman, attached information below. Wherever you want to share, Jason, pop up some stuff about your carpentry. I'd actually love to get you back on just to talk about carpentry in the future. I did not know that was what you're diving into, and I'm super interested, and I'd love to get you back on to talk all things carpentry, man.
Sure.
I need to do some research for it first, because I don't know much about carpentry. I've made a couple small things. I made a bookshelf once. Not a bookshelf, but like a small cupboard in high school. It was fun. It was pretty elementary. But yeah, man, I'd love to have you back on. Is it?
That sounds great. I mean, woodworking is just the process of making shapes.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Straightforward like that. There are some awesome YouTube videos that I've seen about the woodworking from Japan, where these guys are making these crazy angles and using no nails. That's just like,
I'm all about that. It's very, very challenging, but everything that we've been talking about is, I've really gotten into the whole woodworking YouTube, Japanese woodworking YouTube and Instagram. I just deep dive, and I'm like, these people, it's the kind of thing that you need to develop those skills over years and years. And it's very slow. It's exactly what I was talking about. It's very slow. It's very process oriented and detail oriented. And I'm like, these are things that I'm very bad at, and I want to get better at. So
and for people who don't know, it's like, the idea is I saw this one house that was built entirely without nails.
Yes.
Like, it was just like, these pieces were specifically cut, and the wood had these like fingers, and then they slipped a peg in that was perfectly cut, so that then once it was in, you can't pull the pieces out. And it's just, oh my goodness,
it's just amazing. It's
the level of exactness, is that even a word? You know, like the level of
precision would be a better word.
The level of precision is thank you. I have been living abroad for a while. My lexicon is suffering. The level of precision is amazing. So, yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's plan that to get you back on and talk all things carpentry, man.
Sounds great.
All right, brother.
All right.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Yeah.